Hi, Jan here. Welcome to the channel and welcome to Vlogmas 13. And it was in thinking what shall I talk about today that I thought 13, lucky for some. And it just made me think about how people perceive luck and things that are going right or going wrong for them. Sorry, I'm talking with my hands. And it just made me think that a lot of people would look at my life and all the events that have happened and things that have happened to me, and I have actually had an auntie say to me one time, "You've had a really hard life, haven't you?" And I don't actually look at it in those terms, but if you take all these little, quite major things that have happened, some of them really not good things, then you could think that I'm unlucky. But what I have to tell you is I am actually the luckiest person that you will ever encounter in your lives. And I am absolutely sincere in saying that. You know, you might think, oh, I've met somebody who won a lottery. And it's like, no, I am luckier than that. I am, and I sincerely consider myself to be one of the luckiest people ever. And that's because of something that happened before I was born. And I'm sure that most of you, because I know a lot of my audience is a similar age to me, most of you will, even the younger ones, will know about thalidomide. You will have heard about thalidomide. Now, the reason that I say that I am so lucky is when my mother was expecting me, she was suffering from morning sickness and she was prescribed thalidomide. She had the prescription filled and she took one tablet. However, she said it didn't make any difference, so she never took any more. And you've only got to look at all of the people who were affected by that drug to realise just how lucky I am. Now, as I have some anomalies, shall we say, that may or may not be attributed to that one tablet, because it could be, even in minute doses, it could have affected my my development. I know that I was born with some organs in the wrong place. I was born with some not properly formed. Even as recent as 5 or 6 years ago, I was told that I have an anomaly on my kidney, that they've got no idea what it is or why or whatever. There are things that don't seem to be able to be explained. And interestingly, my mum's inquest, after we lost Mum, I was able to speak to the doctor who did her post-mortem, and I was actually able to ask him if my mum had any similar things, because I wondered if she had them, then obviously it could be something genetic that I'd inherited. But he said no, you know, nothing like I was describing. And so, you know, it looks most likely that these things that I do have were the result of that one tablet. The funniest of which being that when I was 58, and I can be a little bit slow sometimes, I was watching a documentary on TV on the gestation of the fetus, and the professor who was talking about it all, I can't remember his name now, very famous British professor, but he was talking about how initially the hands and feet are formed with everything all joined together, and then it starts to separate. And when it doesn't complete the separation properly, that's when you get webbed fingers and webbed feet. And, you know, there's this foot up on the screen. I said to Neil, that looks like my foot. And I had always thought that I've got short toes, but it never occurred to me that they're actually webbed feet, you know. And it just makes me laugh that for 58 years they were just down the other end of my body and I didn't know. And even at school, a swimming lesson one time, one of the girls turned around to me, because obviously I had bare feet, I was walking by the side of the pool, and she said, how can you balance with such short toes? And it's like, well, you walk with what you've got, don't you? It never occurred to me that my balance would be any different to anybody. It's not that I haven't got toes, it's just that they're short. And if you actually look at my foot, the toes are every bit as long as everybody else's. It's just that the skin in between them comes higher up, so they don't separate till the last knuckle, so they just look like short toes. So that may or may not have been caused by a drug that Mum took. It could have just been something that would have happened anyway and has nothing to do with the drug. You know, as I say, I was born with various bits in the wrong place. It could be that we know that I have a narrowed artery in my brain that they think I was born with, and that is what they've attributed all the stroke and the brain problems to. But again, that's another thing about how lucky am I to have survived 5 major brain incidents, and I'm still walking and talking. You know, nobody would actually look at me and think, oh my goodness, you know, you've had this happen or not. I just look normal. Even when I've seen doctors in the past, they don't actually believe that my brain damage is as bad as it is until they actually see the scans, and then they say, oh yeah, this is a major thing. So the fact that I'm able to pass myself off as relatively normal, the biggest way that the brain damage shows is that my balance is very, very bad. So most of the time that isn't an issue, but every Wednesday I go to meet a friend for a drink in the pub. We meet every Wednesday afternoon just for a few hours for a chat, and I only ever drink tea. I have a pot of tea, so you know, I'm not drinking alcohol at all. But every single Wednesday I stagger out of the pub shouting I'm not drunk, because I just think people must look at the way that I stagger and assume that it's alcohol related, but it's not. So again, the other thing that I think that I am blessed with is, and it's not something that I've always had, but it's attitude and how you run your inner dialogue, as it was. Up until my mid-30s, I was as miserable as anybody else that I'd ever come across, but I was kind of in my mid-30s and I realised that I was miserable, and I just suddenly thought to myself, you know, there are a lot of things going on in my life at that time that I had no control over. But what I could control is how I reacted to it. And so I made a very conscious decision to be happy. I made an absolute decision that I was going to meet life head on, and I was going to actually celebrate the fact that I'm okay. Yeah, I mean, this was way before I knew about any of the health issues that I had. And, you know, as over the years, my health issues have become more and more apparent and happened. Even so, I look at those and I think, how lucky am I that I've got this and not that? You know, because I could have been born, you know, without arms or without legs, you know. Any of these things that I always look at other people and I think, well, you know, there are so many people that have life far, far worse than I do. So how dare I indulge myself in some sort of misery, thinking I wish I had what somebody else has got, when, you know, in terms of betterness, when what I've got is so much better than other people. Does that make any sense at all? But, you know, it's the old thing, there is always somebody worse off than yourself. And so whenever I'm feeling a little bit below par, I just think, well, I would still, with all the things that are going on in my life, I would still rather be me than have something else go on. you know, at the moment I'm going through some pretty severe arthritis in my shoulder. If you've been watching these Vlogmases, you'll have seen me clean underneath my kitchen cupboards the other day. And I mean, here we are, what, 3 or 4 days afterwards. I'm really still suffering from that, you know. My shoulder is really painful. But I was able to do it. So I might have a sore shoulder, but I've got clean cupboards. You know, there's always a plus side to it. And, you know, I've also been having some real... all my life I've had insomnia. I've never been a good sleeper ever. You know, from day one I've been having trouble sleeping. But at the moment, the last few nights I've only had about 2 hours a night. And that's because I'm not allowing myself to sleep. And the reason that I'm literally not laying down and allowing myself to go to sleep is because of my AFib, you know, my heart rhythm. But when I actually step back and think about it, you know, I've had this for 23 years. I'm not dead yet. And I sit there of an evening, I think, is it worse than any other day in the last 23 years? And I have to say, no, it's not worse. But for some reason, I'm just a little bit spooked the last few days. So instead of just thinking, it's absolutely fine, it's absolutely normal, just go to sleep and it'll be all right in the morning. Well, I'm still waking up in the morning. You know, I'm well aware that one day I won't. But, you know, so far so good. It's 23 years since I came home from hospital and the doctor from the hospital phoned me up and said, do you realise you could die at any minute? Well, that was 23 years ago. How many minutes have I had since then? How lucky am I that I have had all of these years? And, you know, we are all going to go at some point. But I think when you have an awful lot of health issues, you kind of get used to things and you just kind of carry on as if it's not happening. But then something will happen that reminds you of it. And also, I've lived half my life in quite severe pain from arthritis. And I can cope with pain. I can cope with extremely severe pain because it's what I have all day, every day. But if I get a paper cut, I want to sling in a choir of angels, you know. I can't cope with things out of the ordinary. If I suddenly got a new pain, then, you know, oh, poor me. But the pains that I have all day, every day, generally I can cope with. But then again, I have, you know, I have a constant headache as well. And that, as a rule, I can just cope with. But every now and then I become conscious of it. And then I'm left thinking, is it worse than it always is? And sometimes I think, well, I would just take some painkillers, and if they will hold the pain, the pain never ever goes, no matter what I take. But if they will hold it under control, or get me to a point where I'm not conscious of it all of the time, then that's good enough. You know, because if it's always a question of at what point do you think, right, that's it, I need to go back into hospital. But after my last hospital stay, where they kept me in for 10 days and did absolutely nothing nothing curative, all I had for the whole 10 days were tests and scans and tests, and it was just a waste of everybody's time and NHS money keeping me in there. So I said at that time, and that was pre-COVID, and I said then, I will never go back into hospital. You know, if something else happens, I will just have to die at home. But, you know, I don't want to go back into hospital again, because it's just, unless I've got to go in for a surgery. Surgeons are my absolute heroes, because they will look at an issue and they will say, if I take my scalpel and I cut here and I do this and I do that, I can fix it. And I think it takes quite an amount of courage to do that to another human being. So I'm absolutely in awe of surgeons, but if you see just an ordinary doctor who's just trying things and can't actually come up with anything that's going to cure you, all they've got is, you know, the drug companies saying, well, give her this tablet for the rest of her life, give her that tablet for the rest of her life, and it still doesn't really make a huge difference, then I've not got a lot of confidence in normal doctors. You know, I've had to do a lot of what my animals have gone through, what Neil's gone through, what I've gone through. I've had to do my own research and diagnose things myself, and then go to a doctor and say, this is what I've got, haven't I? Kind of thing. If this makes any sense at all. Sorry, it's not a very jolly Vlogmasy vlog today, is it? As I've said before, and if you've seen my other videos, you'll know that I don't do Christmas, so I can't give you any sort of, you know, I'm still a little bit bar humbug about Christmas. So I just feel as I came in, I thought I'll sit down, I'll have a quick chat about this, and now I'm waffling off in all sorts of directions. So I think probably best to call it quits for now, and I will come back with something more interesting tomorrow. Okay, lots of love. Take care. Bye.